I don't even know where to start without sounding like a maybe because this whole mess is straight out of a bad soap opera. But here I am, trying to figure out what's left of my sanity after the worst betrayal I could imagine. My wife, Sarah, and my brother, Mark, they did something so gut-wrenching I still wake up in a cold sweat just thinking about it. And it all happened during my father's funeral. Yeah, I said funeral. It was one of the worst days of my life, the kind that leaves a black stain on your soul. Our father had just passed away after a long, slow decline. The house was filled with people I barely knew, crying, hugging, whispering condolences that felt pointless. I was trying to hold myself together, not just for my father but for everyone else too. That's when I saw her. Sarah was sitting on the porch, her face pale but composed. She was supposed to be comforting me, but I noticed her shivering, her fingers twitching nervously. I approached her, my stomach twisting like a knot. "You okay?" I asked, voice hoarse. She looked up at me, eyes glistening with tears. I thought she was going to cry for my father, for us. But then she blinked and I saw something else. A flicker of guilt, or was it relief? Whatever it was, it made my skin crawl. Suddenly I saw Mark. He was sitting across the yard, talking quietly with some distant relatives. I watched him for a second, and that's when I saw her slip her hand into his. It was quick, almost a reflex, but I caught it. My breath caught in my throat. They sat there close enough that I could see the faint brush of their hands. My mind spun. How long were they doing this all along? During this funeral in our childhood home where I had so many memories, moments of innocence, of family, of love. And now I was just a ghost in my own life. I didn't say a word at first. I just stared. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears, loud enough to drown out the sobs in the background. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was an assault. It was like they'd taken a knife and stabbed me in the back during the one day I needed my family to be strong. Later that night, I started noticing other things. Things I tried to ignore but couldn't anymore. The scent of her perfume, which I'd always loved, now left a sickeningly sweet smell on my pillow. Her phone kept buzzing with messages I wasn't meant to see. When I finally got a hold of her phone, I found a series of texts. Flirty, intimate, too detailed for just friends. It was like a needle in my gut every time I looked at her. I realized then that the red flags I'd ignored, her keeping late nights, her secretive whispers on the phone, her sudden trips out of town, weren't just suspicious. They were evidence. Evidence I'd missed because I was too busy grieving my father to see the truth. And that truth, it was sitting there, plain as day, wrapped in lies. She had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and my own brother helped her do it. Now the question was, what the hell do I do with this? Do I confront her? Do I pack my bags and walk away? Or do I get revenge? I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about revenge right then and there, every night, every time I saw her face. Revenge had become an obsession. A plan was slowly forming, one I knew would shake the ground beneath their feet. But I also knew I had to wait, had to gather my strength. Patience, I told myself, even as my stomach churned with rage, because I wasn't going to let this slide. No, I needed them to understand just how deep their betrayal cut. I needed to make sure they paid, not with words, but with something they'd never forget. But how? That was the question I kept asking myself as the darkness crept in around me. And in that darkness, I promised myself one thing: they would regret crossing me. They'd regret making me feel small. I might lost my father, but I was still standing, and I was coming for them. The days after the funeral blurred into a strange, heavy silence. I went through the motions, work, eating, sleeping, but nothing felt real anymore. My mind kept circling back to that scene on the porch, too. The way Sarah's hand slipped into Mark's like a secret handshake. I couldn't shake the image, no matter how I tried. It was burned into my brain like a scar I couldn't hide. The worst part was the disbelief. I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if somehow I'd been blind to what was right in front of me. But no, deep down, I knew. I just refused to see it because I loved her, because I desperately wanted things to be okay. That was my mistake, ignoring the red flags that were glaring at me like neon signs. One night, I finally decided to go through her things, her emails, her texts, anything that might give me some clarity. I wasn't planning to snoop, but after what I'd seen, I needed proof. So I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling as I opened her laptop. Her password was stupidly obvious, her birthday. I guess I'd never thought to question her loyalty enough. What I found made my stomach drop. There were dozens of messages between her and Mark, some heated, some playful, some downright intimate. And buried among them was a thread where they planned to meet secret during the funeral. She told him she couldn't wait to see him again, that she'd missed him so much. I read it over and over. My hands trembled as I scrolled through. I could feel my blood boiling, the way your veins pulse, your palms grow slick. How could they? How could she do this to me during my father's funeral, the day we should have been supporting each other? Instead, she was sneaking off with my own brother. I closed her laptop with a snap. My mind spun with rage and a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to confront her just yet. No, I needed to think. I needed a plan that would hit them where it hurt. I could feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on me, but beneath that, I was starting to see a way out, one that involved a little calculated revenge. I spent the next few days quietly digging. I wanted to find something that would shame them, something that would make them regret their actions. I remembered a story I'd heard about an anonymous tip, something that could blow their lies out of the water without me ever having to say a word. It was risky, dangerous even, but I was done being the victim. Late at night, I created a fake email account. I sent a message to Mark, pretending to be someone who'd seen him with Sarah that night. I described in detail what I'd seen, making it sound like I'd caught them in the act, just enough to make him nervous but not enough to blow my cover. Then I added a little twist, that I had proof of their affair, something I was willing to share if he didn't come clean first. The next step was just waiting. I knew Mark would panic, and I wanted to be ready for when he did. I figured he'd come crawling, desperate to clear his conscience, or maybe even try to pin it all on me. Either way, I'd be there, ready to expose everything. The plan was simple. I'd make them believe I knew every detail, push them into a corner where they'd have no choice but to come clean. When they did, I'd be prepared to face them. I'd confront Sarah with the evidence. I'd show her I wasn't the fool she thought I was, and Mark, his betrayal was the final nail. I'd make sure he knew I saw him as the traitor he'd become. It was a cold, calculated move, but I'd reached a point where I didn't care about playing nice anymore. I wanted them to feel the same pain I did. I wanted them to know what it felt like to be betrayed so deeply, so cruelly, in the one moment I'd been the most vulnerable. The phone buzzed one night. It was Mark. His voice sounded shaky, jittery. "I think we need to talk," he said. His words sent a spike of adrenaline through my body. I kept my tone steady, calm. "Yeah, we do, but I think you should know I've got proof, real proof, so let's not waste time pretending everything's okay." As I listened to him stumble over excuses, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread, because I knew at that moment I was finally taking control. I'd be the one to decide how this story ends, not them. Not with betrayal, not with lies. And I wondered, how long could I keep this up? Would I come out the winner, or was I just digging my own grave? All I knew for sure was that the game had begun, and I was determined to play it to the bitter end. The confrontation with Mark didn't happen right away. Instead, I spent the next few days meticulously planning how I'd reel them in. I wasn't about to make a mistake or give them a chance to wiggle free. My head was spinning with the possibilities. How to make them believe I had the upper hand without exposing everything all at once. Meanwhile, Mark's calls became more frantic. He kept trying to talk to me, acting like he was remorseful, like he wanted to fix things. I played it cool, acting like I was still in shock, still trying to process what I'd found. Inside, I was simmering. Every time I heard his voice, I could feel the heat of my rage. I wanted to scream, but I kept my voice steady. One night, I set the trap. I sent him a message saying I'd meet him somewhere private for a talk, but I made it clear I knew exactly what he'd done. I told him. I had evidence that I was ready to confront him face to face. His response was immediate, a string of nervous texts, begging for an explanation, pleading for me to meet him. I told him to wait in the usual spot near my childhood home. It was quiet, isolated, perfect for what I had planned. I knew he'd come, and I was ready. When he arrived, I was already there, sitting on the porch, cold and unmoving. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that makes your skin clammy and your stomach churns. As he approached, I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, cold, hard, unwavering. He hesitated, voice trembling as he finally spoke. "Look, I know I fucked up. I don't want to lose everything over this, man. Just tell me what you want." I stood up slowly. "You want to know what I want? I want you to tell me everything, all of it. Every secret, every lie, every time you two thought I wouldn't find out." He looked down, guilty and ashamed. "It was just a stupid mistake. I never meant for it to go this far." "Stupid." "Mistake," I echoed, feeling the words like acid in my throat. "That's funny because I've got proof, I've got messages. I know you two spent the night together in my house right after the funeral." His face went pale. "You've got proof?" I nodded. "More than proof. I've got texts, photos, everything. You think you can just come here and apologize? No, Mark. I want you to understand how deeply you've betrayed me, how much trust you threw away." He looked like he was about to break. "I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand. I was hurting and You were hurting. You're damn right you were hurting, but you could come to me. You could said something. Instead, you chose to spend my last moments with my father sneaking around, hiding like cowards." I saw the flicker of regret in his eyes, but it was too late for apologies. I'd already made up my mind. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I'd let my anger simmer long enough. Now I was ready to make them understand the price of betrayal. As he stood there, silent and guilt-ridden, I could feel my fists clench again, my jaw tight. I didn't punch him, not physically anyway, but I delivered the message loud and clear. "This is over. Stay away from me. Stay away from my family, because from this moment on, you're dead to me." He nodded, defeated, and I watched him walk away, the night swallowing his figure. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd finally confronted him. Now the real game could begin. But before I left that porch, I made a decision. I would exact my revenge in a way they'd never forget, something subtle but devastating. I was done playing nice. I'd make sure they knew exactly how much they'd hurt me and how far I was willing to go. As I turned back into the house, I wondered how long it would take for them to realize the damage was already done. And I wondered if I'd ever be able to look at either of them without that horrible feeling of betrayal clawing at my chest. My mind was already racing ahead, plotting the next move. Because revenge isn't a one-time act, it's a slow burn, and I was just getting started. The aftermath of that night was something I couldn't quite put into words. I felt like I'd lifted a weight, but at the same time, everything else felt fragile, like walking on thin ice. My mind kept circling back to the images, the sounds of Mark's voice cracking, Sarah's panicked silence. I'd done what I set out to do: confront, expose, and make them feel the gravity of their betrayal. But I knew deep inside that this wasn't the end, just the beginning of a different kind of storm. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollow but strangely clear. I had handed over the evidence, the proof of everything I'd discovered. I'd told Mark to stay away, to leave me alone. Now it was on them to deal with the fallout. Or so I thought. I thought that once I'd been honest, I'd feel some kind of relief. Instead, I was met with a gnawing sense of emptiness, like I'd lost part of myself in that confrontation. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the way Mark looked at me, the way Sarah's face crumpled when I'd shown her the messages. I wondered if they'd try to deny it, if they'd try to pretend it was all a misunderstanding. But I knew better. I had the proof, and I'd made damn sure they knew I wasn't bluffing. Still, the silence that followed felt deafening. No apology, no remorse, just an eerie quiet, like they'd retreated to their separate corners, plotting their next move. I didn't trust that silence. I could feel the tension building, a storm waiting to explode. And honestly, I didn't want to wait around for the explosion. I had to act, to take control of what was left of my life. I started thinking about my next move. Revenge, I decided, wasn't just about hurting them. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I wanted to hit them where it hurt the most, make them understand that their betrayal wasn't going to break me, that I was still standing, stronger than ever. That's when I remembered that a friend of mine, Mike, was into some discreet, not-so-legal stuff. Not enough to land him in prison, but enough to give me an edge. I reached out to Mike one afternoon. "Listen," I said, voice low and steady, "I need something done, something that'll make them wish they stayed the hell away. I explained what I'd found, what I wanted to do, and he listened intently. His eyes gleamed with understanding. "You want to send a message," he said, nodding. "Something that hits hard but doesn't leave a trace. I've got just the thing, a little digital firework. They won't see it coming." That's when I started to realize how far I was willing to go. I wasn't just going to confront them anymore. I was about to give them a taste of what betrayal really costs. I was setting up a plan that would make them uncomfortable, paranoid, desperate for answers they'd never get. The plan was simple. I'd leak the evidence of their affair to a few select people, mutual acquaintances, family members, even some old friends who still cared about my reputation. Not in a way that labeled them outright, but enough to plant doubt. I wanted them to feel exposed, vulnerable, like everyone was watching. Meanwhile, I kept myself busy, pretending everything was fine. I'd show up for family dinners, smile, and act like I hadn't been broken inside. But inside, I was meticulously orchestrating the final blow. I'd make sure they knew I wasn't done, not by a long shot. One evening, I sat in my car outside my house, feeling the familiar knot tighten in my stomach. I had the evidence ready to be sent out, the small false leaks I'd set up to appear like gossip from an anonymous source. I could almost taste the anticipation, the slow, creeping unraveling of their lives. I clenched the steering wheel, feeling the cool leather bite into my palms. This was the calm before the storm. I knew that once I pressed send, there'd be no turning back. I was about to turn their world upside down, and honestly, I couldn't wait. Because betrayal by loved ones doesn't just hurt, it destroys whatever trust you once had. And I was done trusting them. I took a deep breath, pressed the button, and watched as the digital dominoes started to fall. It felt like the first real step toward reclaiming my life, a small, dirty victory. But I knew in my gut that the real reckoning was just beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The next few days were pure chaos. I could feel the tension ripple through my house like a bad storm waiting to break. People started talking, whispers in the neighborhood, the way someone's gaze would flick to me then quickly look away. I didn't need to hear what was being said, I already knew. The leaks had worked. The evidence was out everywhere. Sarah was a mess. Her face looked pale and drawn, her eyes darted around like she was trying to escape something invisible. She tried to act normal, but you could see the cracks. She'd give me these small, desperate looks like she was begging for forgiveness without saying a word. I didn't care. Not anymore. I'd given her enough chances, enough hints. She'd pushed me to the edge, and now she was paying the price. Mark, too, was suffering. The once confident smirk had been replaced with a nervous twitch. He avoided me at all costs, and I made sure to remind him that I knew everything by subtly dropping hints, letting him stew in his own guilt. I'd see the panic in his eyes when someone mentioned my name or looked at him sideways. Good, that was the point. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd done, and I wanted them to know I was the one pulling the strings. One evening, I finally caught Sarah alone in the kitchen. She was stirring some tea, her hands trembling so badly that the mug shook in her grasp. I approached her slowly, deliberately. "You've been quiet lately," I said, voice cold. She looked up, tears pooling in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for it to get this far." I clenched my fists. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you spent the night in my childhood home with my brother behind my back during the worst day of my life. She flinched, but I kept going. You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought I'd never see the truth. Well, I did. And now I'm done pretending you're innocent. Her shoulders shook as she cried, but inside I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I'd shown her that I knew everything, that I'd uncovered the deepest secrets she tried to hide. The damage was done. Now it was just a matter of how they'd try to pick up the pieces, if they could at all. Meanwhile, I'd kept my distance, letting the evidence do its work. I saw them squirm, saw the doubt creep into their eyes. It was a slow, intoxicating game, and I reveled in it. They thought they could brush it off, that they could pretend everything was normal, but I knew better. I knew I'd created a crack that nothing could fix. One day I received a message from Mark, a simple, trembling text. "Can we talk? I want to explain." I hesitated for a moment, then responded, "Meet me at the old park tomorrow, be there at noon." I wanted him to sweat a little to understand there was no going back now. The next day Mark showed up looking like someone who'd aged 10 years in a week. His face was pale, shadows under his eyes. I stood a few feet away, feeling the familiar surge of hostility. "So," I said, voice level but icy, "you want to talk?" He nodded, voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I weak. I loved her, I swear, but I didn't want to hurt you." I crossed my arms. "You already did, and I want you to understand what that means." I took a step closer, voice lowering. "You betrayed me not just as your brother, but as a man who trusted you with everything. Your actions, they've cost you a lot more than I think you realize." He looked down, guilt pouring off him. "I know I screwed up. I regret everything. But is there any way we can fix this? Maybe start over?" I shook my head slowly. "No, there's no fixing this. That trust, it's shattered. You and Sarah can go live your lies, your fake apologies, but I'm done. I'm done pretending I don't see what you've done, and I'm done with you." That exchange marked the turning point. I'd made my choice. I was cutting them out of my life completely. That night I went back home and I sat in my living room feeling the weight of it all settle over me. I'd lost my family, or at least the family I thought I had, but I'd gained clarity. I realized that revenge wasn't just about hurting them, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my boundaries. I was tired of being the victim, tired of feeling helpless. This was my stand. No more secrets, no more lies. They'd have to face the consequences of their actions, and I would be the one to deliver them. The question now wasn't just about revenge. It was about healing. And I knew, deep down, I'd have to decide how to rebuild myself after everything. But for now, I was done waiting. I'd made the move, and I was ready for whatever came next. That night I sat alone in my darkened living room, feeling the quiet hum of the world outside. The house was finally silent. No more lurking shadows, no more secrets. I'd handed over the keys, physically and emotionally, to the house we grew up in, to the memories I could no longer bear to keep. The keys clinked onto the table, heavy and final. That simple sound marked the end of something that had haunted me for weeks. The betrayal had cut deep. The image of Sarah and Mark, the stolen night, the lie that had festered in the shadows, all of it now laid bare. I could still feel the sickening twist in my stomach when I remembered walking into the house and finding the evidence on her phone, how my hands trembled as I read the messages. It was like my entire world had been turned upside down and I'd been left to pick up the pieces. But the pain also brought clarity. I realized I'd been living in a fog of false hope, convincing myself that things could somehow be fixed. That love meant forgiving. That betrayal was just a mistake. But I learned something vital. Forgiveness isn't always possible, especially when the trust has been shattered beyond repair. Sometimes, the only way forward is to cut your losses and walk away. Looking back, I see how I let myself stay blind for too long, ignoring the signs, pretending the red flags weren't really there. I was so desperate to hold on to the life I thought I had, to my wife, my brother, my family, that I ignored the warning signs. Now I understand that sometimes love isn't enough. Trust isn't just a word, it's the foundation that holds everything together. When that's broken, nothing remains. Revenge, I've come to realize, isn't about petty payback or cruelty for cruelty's sake. It's about reclaiming your dignity, setting boundaries, and refusing to be a victim any longer. I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted to show them that their actions had consequences, that betrayal is a poison that can't be contained. The subtle leaks, the confrontations, the silent treatments, they all served to remind them that I was still standing, unbroken, and that their lies couldn't hide from the truth. In the end, I decided to leave the house behind, to start fresh somewhere else. I handed over the keys to the house, a symbol of everything I'd lost, and told myself it was time to rebuild. I didn't do it out of hatred, but out of necessity, to free myself from the ghosts of the past and focus on my future. Looking back, I can say this: betrayal is a brutal lesson. It teaches you who your true friends are, who deserves your trust, and how strong you really are. I learned that secrets fester in silence, and that honesty, although painful, is the only way to move on. I also learned that revenge, if taken correctly, can be a form of liberation, a way to take back control when life has thrown you to the ground. To anyone reading this, I want to say, Don't be afraid to walk away from people who betray you. Don't let their lies define your worth. Heal at your own pace, and remember that sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to cut the ties that hold you back. Trust your instincts, stand firm, and never forget that your peace is worth more than anyone's betrayal. I close the chapter on that house, on that heartbreak, and on the people who shattered my world. And even if it hurts, even if the wounds are still fresh, I know now that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. Life will go on. Trust will be rebuilt, but only with those who truly deserve it. And so I walk forward, leaving the past behind me, knowing I made it through the darkness by holding onto my own strength. Because in the end, the greatest revenge is simply living well, on your own terms, free from deception and betrayal. And that's exactly what I intend to do.